How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Perfect Reload Weekly, where we take a look back at the week in video game news. My name is Steve, and I'm joined, as always, by Christian Slater. This week was Thanksgiving, so if you celebrated, I hope you had a good one. I know it can be stressful for some people, but I hope you had a pleasant one, if possible. Christian, how you doing coming off the holiday week?
Well, I know I wasn't supposed to eat the Thanksgiving leftovers, but you didn't need to beat me with a turkey leg and pour sweet potatoes into my data slot. A simple no would have sufficed.
Yeah, you weren't trying to eat them, you were trying to take them and throw them out. There's a big difference there. You like to cloud the truth a lot, but I gotta tell you, I am Thanksgiving fooded out. I was sent home with enough leftovers for 3 days worth of every meal being Thanksgiving food. So I think I am good to go on turkey and the such for quite some time. But yeah, with it being, Thanksgiving week, a lot of people off here in the States, people take vacation or, their business is closed for Thanksgiving, Black Friday, all that stuff. So there wasn't that much going on. No new video game releases this week. Not a lot going on in the news, though. Actually, a fair amount of kind of interesting stuff popped up. So, we have some stuff to talk about, but I didn't spend a lot of time playing games this week for two reasons. The first of which was I was spending most of my time getting work done on the next Perfect Reload video, and the second of which is I've talked about this. I'll be able to shut up about it because it's happening tomorrow at this point. Is I've been just studying a lot for my final exam for the classes I was taking. So hopefully that all goes well and I pass. That was kind of preoccupying, or that was, where my time went. So we'll talk about the new video real quick just to kind of get it out of the way. So it's done, for the most part. I would say 99% done. The only thing I have to do is just balance the audio between, the music bed underneath and my voice. But other than that, it's all edited and assembled and the effects are applied and everything is all good to go. I had a really good time working on it. It's going to be only the second one I got to this year. I did the fighting game one earlier this year. I was hoping to do more than one, but they take a lot of work, and this year was just a real rocky year with a whole bunch of stuff going on, kind of carrying over from last year. So it was just I think it was more a question of just finding the motivation to get it done. But so the video is going to be out. Let me take a look at a calendar real quick. I think I'm probably going to put it out next Wednesday, December 6th is probably when it's going to go up. And it's the subject this time is the year 1999. So I did a year in review previously, which I think was 1991. And that one only talked about video games of 1991, what was going on. As in America, we were getting ready for the Super Nintendo, the holdover still of the NES, the Genesis feud with Nintendo was ramping up, all that kind of crazy stuff that was going on. So this time we were talking about the year 1999, but we were also not just talking about the video games in 1999, we're talking about the movies and music of 1999 as well. I think, for the last video I did, the fighting game video, I think that video is fine. I am proud of the editing in that video because I did a lot of I kind of just, kind of thought outside my comfort zone for some of the stuff that I did. So I am proud of the editing of that. I think the script could have been better, but it was one of those things where it was just like, I need to get this done to show myself that I can do these again. I think this one is a much stronger video, and I'm not going to hype it up and be like, oh, this is amazing, you have to check it out. Check it out if you're interested in it. But I think that this one came out pretty good. And it's got me excited to do more. I don't know what the next subject I'll do is. I'm sure I'll come up with something, but I would like to get another one done sooner rather than later because I did really enjoy working on this. So, maybe I'll, if I have the time over the next few weeks, maybe I'll start developing an idea for a next one. So yeah, be on the lookout for that next Wednesday. So that should be I don't know, a treat, I guess, because these have been so infrequent. It's up to you to decide. But yeah, I figured we'll get that out of the way since that was kind of the majority of what I spent my time doing this week.
Oh, I'm sure your audience is going to love this steamy steaming pile of shit you got coming their way. I was watching you edit it the other night. None of it was funny. All of it was depressing.
Well, of course, all of it is depressing. We live in a black hole over here. What do you expect? But yeah, other than that, the only thing I really got to is I played a bunch of Call of Duty this week, and this will probably be the last time I talk about it, because I try not to talk about the same game every week. But I think I've now played enough of it. I'm almost at max level. I've maxed out a couple of guns at this point. You know, doing the camo grind to unlock gold on some stuff. So I think I've played enough of it to form a pretty solid opinion to give an overall perspective on it. I think it's, in ways, it's a much stronger game than last year's. In ways, I think it is better than the past couple. I think this is probably the best one. From a gameplay perspective, probably the best since the 2019 reboot of Modern Warfare. My biggest concern, or not concern, but my biggest complaint with the game through the beta and, you know, the first week or so of playing the game since it came out was the time to kill. It was a little bit slower than I was used to, a little bit slower than I would have preferred. I have since settled into, I actually really am enjoying the time to kill in this game. I think it's actually like a pretty good balance. It took me a little bit of time to get adjusted to it, but I actually think it's pretty fair. That being said, I haven't spent a lot of time in modes where time to kill actually matters, because now that hardcore is firmly back in the game, I've been mostly playing hardcore mode. That's kind of my bread and butter. That's what I really like. The gun I am using is a one-shot kill. A lot of the guns are in hardcore are 1 to 3 shot kills. I would say the majority of them are 1 to 2 shot. And I think it's a really fair mode. I think that it, you know, not having that mini map out all the time kind of forces you to learn the maps, forces you to understand how the spawns work, forces you to understand, you know, the flow of a standard game depending on what mode you're playing, because enemy movement, even though it's not AI, it's human people, enemy movement is going to be very different if it's team deathmatch versus domination versus hardpoint, whatever. And making UAVs feel super powerful. You know, when you get one and you can start to see everybody on the map, like that really, it really provides a much more of a payoff than it does in a standard game when you have that mini map going all the time. And I've just really settled in and really enjoyed it. But that being said, while I said that I think in many ways this is the best one they've done in quite some time, I also think that there are some choices that they made, which I understand the choices. We talked about the armory unlock system last week. I understand why they did it, because in this game you are leveling up super fast. I would say the large majority of the people that I have been playing with over the past couple of nights are max level, and I'm not that far off. I only have a few more levels to go. They've been running double XP on PlayStation 5 almost all week. And it makes it very easy to get up there. So they, instead of having, you know, all of your unlocks happen either as you unlock your gun level, you know, leveling your gun up, or leveling your just normal level up, you know, they've done this armory system where you have to put points into unlocking things anywhere between, I think the smallest I've seen is 2 points. The most I think I've seen is 8. And you earn those points by completing the daily challenges or winning matches. And so it can be kind of slow. I think the change they made, which we talked about last week, where they patched in the ability that those wins count as points. Previously, the wins only counted as points if you cleared off all the daily challenges for a day. I didn't like that, because some of those daily challenges are just damn difficult to do, or they force you to play a style of game that you just don't want to play. Like, it's not a daily challenge, but for one of the camo challenges I'm doing right now is I have to get 25 kills in tac stance. Tac stance is a hybrid between aiming down sights and hip fire. In hardcore mode, you have no idea where you are aiming. So it's easier to do in hardcore mode because, like I said, with the gun I'm using, it's a one-shot kill, but you are just blindly firing. And it is not a viable strategy on a lot of the maps due to the size of the maps. Maybe if you're playing on Rust, or when Shipment comes out in a week, or actually Shipment might be the end of this week. It might be like Thursday or Friday. maybe that's a little bit more viable to do, but it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, now I'm being forced to play this like weird style of play that I don't really want to engage with, but it is what it is. I think the armory system, I understand what they were going for. I certainly get it. I think it's better that they tried it than never trying something different. I think that lesson learned, maybe they can perfect it somehow. Maybe they can change it up, make it a little bit better, only tie certain things to it instead of everything to it. I think there's a few different ways. I also think that the way they changed the perk system, I don't like the equipment thing. I don't like that if you equipped a certain vest, it takes away a perk slot, or others add a perk slot, or you can't use certain perks with certain vests. Like, I think that that's just, it's too restrictive. I just want to be able to make my player the way that I want to make my player. I don't want to be confined to some bizarre archaic system that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I think that the perk system is fine. Just give me 3 perk slots. Each perk slot has X number of perks to select from, and I apply them and I'm done. That's it. It's not to say that it was ever a perfect system, but it's a really solid system that was consistent for a lot of time. So I would say just leave it the way it is. You don't really need to change it up too much. I think sometimes they maybe listen to player feedback a little bit too much. Because you have all these people complaining about skill-based matchmaking and all this stuff. It's because they want to be able to play against lower-ranked players or players that aren't good at the game, so they can pad their stats and look good and be like, oh, I'm so great at Call of Duty because I went 36-2 against a bunch of people that were level 1 that are playing the game for a first time. Like, don't listen to those people. That's not the bulk of the people that are playing this game. The bulk of the people... You go on the Call of Duty like subreddit, and you would think that everybody is like this like try hard like want to be a professional level player, and it's like that's not the case. Like, there are so many people that play Call of Duty. It's one of the best selling games every year. It's just random normal video game players, casual video game players that play Call of Duty. They don't give a shit. The majority of them have no idea what skill-based matchmaking is. They have no clue, nor do they care to have a clue, because it doesn't affect them in any way. Just play the game. If you're spending all of your time complaining about this game online, stop playing the game. Nobody's telling you that you have to play the game. It's because you've made it your personality that, oh, I'm a Call of Duty player and that's all I have to offer to the world. Like, dude, you gotta check out, man, because it's just not working for you. So it's been interesting reading through some of those posts. Every once in a while, somebody puts up like a really sane take, and then like they get just buried to death, in the comments. Like, oh no, you don't understand, man. Like, this is ruining video games. It's not ruining video games. The game is fine. The game is fine. It really is. It's fine. The map selection is sort of by default one of the best map selections they've had in a long time, because they took arguably the greatest Call of Duty of all time and just put the maps in there. I think they've been really smart with some of the playlists they've doing by doing like Terminal 24/7 and doing Rust 24/7. That gives people kind of what they want. Shipments coming soon, and people are complaining about, Shipment being back in the game. You don't have to play it. You don't have to. There's nothing telling you that you have to click on that Shipment playlist. You don't have to. You just don't. Nobody's forcing you to. You're choosing to. So I really don't understand it. Call of Duty people are a bunch of whiny little weenie hut juniors that just need to grow up a bit. And it's like, dude, just play your game. And if you don't want to play it, then don't play it. There's 9 million other games that came out this year. We're in one of the greatest years of all time for video games, and you're complaining about Call of Duty. Like, just go play something else. There's plenty of other things that you can play. So it's ridiculous. It really is. It's absolutely ridiculous. But that was pretty much it. I'm going to try and get back to some Mario RPG. I haven't played it in a few days, so I want to get back to that and try and finish that up. I think what I'm going to really try and do this week is, because I don't have much going on this week, because the video, like I said, the video is pretty much done, so that's not going to take up a lot of my time. I'll have that done today or tomorrow. I think I'm going to really try and force myself to get as much progress in Phantom Liberty as possible. I still got to play some more Alan Wake. Those are like the 2 top priorities. I think everything else is kind of like, I don't think I'm going to get to RoboCop before the end of the year. Because RoboCop's not going to like make any of my like year end talking points for the most part, even though I really like the game and I think it's straight up like the hidden gem of the year. It's realistically not going to make a lot of the talking points. So I think that it's more prudent for me to play Alan Wake 2 and Phantom Liberty than something like RoboCop, because I looked at the calendar last night. It's not until the end of January that I think like the first big release of 2024 for me is. Maybe it's the third week of January, but it's, the Prince of Persia is coming out. So it's not like, oh, it's just this week and maybe next week or a lull. It's like, no, we are about to hit like 6 weeks of not too much going on. So I definitely okay with putting off RoboCop for a few weeks while I try and grind out some other stuff, because we have them, it's getting close. We are this Friday will, 2 weeks from this Friday is my game of the year stuff it's December 15th. So I'm trying to get as much done as I can. It's not even before that, it's because we're filming it, before that. So I have to try and get, I've got essentially 2 weeks to try and get as much of Alan Wake and Phantom Liberty done as possible. So that's kind of going to be the goal going forward. There is some stuff coming out in December. I have it written down. Let me pull that up real quick. House Flipper 2 is coming out, I believe. There is a couple of things coming to Game Pass, and of course my internet doesn't want to cooperate right now. Okay, yeah, December 1st, which is that's this Friday, is SteamWorld Build. So we're going to check that out. Coming to Game Pass is a game called Against the Storm, which I guess was an early access game. And it was getting some really nice write-ups on Reddit for the thread of the trailer, where they announced it was coming to Game Pass. So I'm going to check that out. And then House Flipper 2 I have written down as December 14th. So, I guess this week expect a video on SteamWorld Build. If it comes out on Friday, then we'll probably have a video up on Saturday. So there's a couple of things coming out between now and the end of the year, but for the most part, it's probably going to be a lot of talk of getting caught up on stuff. But that's going to do it for what I have been playing, and we will be back in just a moment with the news. All right, we are back with the news, and we are going to kick things off with the game that apparently has a voodoo curse on it, where it has died and been resurrected and died again and resurrected, and it is just going back and forth, and that is the Knights of the Old Republic remake, the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake. So there have been multiple reports, including a recent one by Jeff Grubb, saying that the game is absolutely not being worked on. Jason Schreier fired back and said, nope, it is being worked on. His actual quote says, can't say whether the KOTOR remake will ever actually come out, but yes, 2 people from Saber Interactive tell me that they're still working on it despite recent rumors that nobody is working on the game. So Saber Interactive took over the project from Aspyr. That was kind of a big thing. And then earlier this year, Sony pulled down trailers for the game promoting it. And we've been talking about this back and forth. I remember it was summertime was the first time I think we heard that the game was being canceled, and then there's been multiple reports since then. So here's the article from Jordan Midler over at VGC. It says, Build is a collaboration between developer Aspyr Media and production partners Lucasfilm Games and Sony Interactive Entertainment. The game was announced as a timed PS5 console exclusive during a PlayStation Showcase event in September 2021, but has reportedly been beset by problems over the last couple of years. So it's really weird because, Sony gave this like bizarre excuse for why they pulled down the trailers, because it's a Sony partnered game. So it's a game that they obviously would be pushing, would be marketing and all this stuff. They claimed that they pulled the trailers down due to like music licensing expiring. That's not how that works. If you license music for a trailer, you're licensing it in perpetuity, because, that's going to sit on the internet for pretty much forever and a day at this point. It's not like movies and more specifically television shows back in the day. If you remember during the rise of DVD, especially during like the early part of the 2000s, companies like Shout Factory and stuff like that would get retro, for lack of a better term, television shows. WKRP in Cincinnati, stuff like that. Stuff that had heavily a heavy use of licensed music, and that was a big reason why stuff like Freaks and Geeks didn't come out for a really long time, is because these bands that had licensed music through their record label or publishing company or whoever owned the rights to the music, they would license it for the television show. Okay, well, the television show's done. Okay, the agreement is over. Well, wait, now we're going to put it out on DVD and you're going to start making money from it again? Well, we never said that you could do that. So that was like a big deal. But these days, that stuff has all been pretty much hashed out because, movies go to streaming now and everything is almost everywhere. Not every movie is always available. But for the most part, most major motion pictures, most major television shows, et cetera, are available in one way or another on a streaming service. And they've kind of sorted that stuff out, and with trailers, especially, like you get that stuff in perpetuity and you don't have to worry about it. So I think that's a made up thing there. I think that perhaps maybe they were going to cancel it and then they decided not to. And that's why people are still working on it. Like, I don't know, because it seems unless there is just a real big problem going on at Saber Interactive, because I assume that there was a problem, or I'm sorry, at Aspyr, because you would have to assume that it was a big problem at Saber, or no, I am getting this backwards. Jeez, I am so sorry. There had to have been a big problem at Aspyr for them to yank it from Aspyr and give it to Saber Interactive. So I'm sure at some point they were like, well, maybe we should just cancel this thing. And maybe there wasn't a lot of progress being made at Aspyr earlier this year. And they're like, well, let's pull the trailers down because we're probably just going to quietly cancel this thing and try and not talk about it. But you can't really do that when it's a property like Star Wars, because it's you could say what you want to about Star Wars, about the quality of the movies, quality of the television shows, whatever. It is still a pop culture phenomenon in a massive, massive license. So you can't hide things in the Star Wars universe because those fans are scouring internet forums and any, hint of news about a game. And then not only that, it's KOTOR itself was a massively successful game. It's like an iconic RPG of the last 20 years. It's BioWare. I wouldn't say necessarily BioWare at its peak, but it's BioWare near its peak. I think BioWare, personally, I think they peaked at Mass Effect 2, but this was like well on their way, because a lot of people kind of forget what BioWare was before Mass Effect. I think in the mind of a lot of younger fans, BioWare kind of starts with Mass Effect and goes forward, but it's really not the case. You're missing out on Knights of the Old Republic. You're missing out on Jade Empire, which if any game needs like a remake, remaster, whatever, I would love to see somebody do something with Jade Empire, because that was a great, great game. So they can't really hide that this would be like silently canceled. They would have to make some type of formal statement saying like, hey, this is canceled. And it's a shame, because I think that this game deserves a remake, because I went back a couple years ago when I think it was when EA Play got put up on the Game Pass, and they put all those games up there, and it's on there. It is available to download. You could still play this game on modern systems. And it's a little rough at this point. I think it's obviously missing a lot of modern conveniences that RPGs would have. It's certainly not unplayable by any stretch, but I think it's a harder entry point for a lot of players that are just used to those comforts that they would have in a modern RPG. So I think that they could clean that stuff up. It's a no-brainer. It would sell quite a bit. I think that they would certainly sell a few million copies. Honestly, I think it'd be tougher if it was only a PS5 exclusive. If it was PS5, Xbox, PC, all that, then yeah, I think I could certainly see it selling a couple million copies. Absolutely, 100%. So I hope they kind of figure it out, because this was one of the ones I was kind of pulling for. I've really enjoyed, the fact that Star Wars is being able to branch out beyond EA. I think EA kind of saved itself with what they did with the Jedi games, and I'm eagerly awaiting the next one. I think Star Wars Outlaws by Ubisoft looks super promising. We'll see how that goes. I'm a big sucker for Quantic Dream stuff, so if their Star Wars game ever comes out, obviously I'm going to be right in line to pick it up. And I'd love to see the KOTOR remake actually happen, because I think that it would be a blast to go through that game again. I've only played it once. I played it when it came out. I never, aside from just going back, I only spent a few hours, but I didn't finish it. But I only ever finished it the once. So I would love to be able to go back and and play through it again, because it really is. It's a classic. I think it's kind of earned its classic label at this point, 100%.
They need to figure this out. Daddy found himself a Dyson hairdryer with a Jedi kink, and I need to brush up on my references.
You need to stop talking forever. Because Call of Duty will never go away. So a bunch of stuff leaked out about the next Call of Duty game, because they can never give themselves any time off. Call of Duty 2024 will be Black Ops again, and it will be taking place in the Gulf War. And it's being made by Treyarch. Treyarch hasn't worked on a Call of Duty in quite some time, so they've had a lot of time to work on this. So here is the article from Tom Ivan over at VGC. I'll kind of paraphrase from this. New Black Ops title set in the early 1990s during the Gulf War, development being led by Treyarch. It's seeking to explore a nuanced narrative of the Gulf War with a critical focus on different participants within the conflict. It will lean back into more traditional military combat technology and familiar Black Ops gadgetry, as opposed to the current and near future tech we've seen from Modern Warfare, etc., etc. It's claimed that the game's multiplayer offering could include a large number of classic maps from the Black Ops series. Zombies would return as well. And there's talking about a lengthy early access period as a pre-order bonus. I'm not quite sure what they mean by that. They already do that. They give away the campaign, a week or two early. I would assume that they would just probably to keep that up. I don't know. I kind of fell off the Black Ops stuff. I didn't play Black Ops Cold War. I played 4 when it came out and thought it was okay, but I just couldn't really get into it. I've always not been super high on the Treyarch stuff because they just play differently. They had kind of 2 different play systems going for a while. They just feel different. It's weird that it's a Call of Duty game, but it feels different than the other Call of Duty games. But, I'm firmly entrenched in Call of Duty at this point, I think I could probably give up on saying that, like, I'm going to take a year off or skip a game or something like that, like I did with Cold War. I think I'm probably back all in at picking this up every year. So I guess this time next year, we'll be talking about the Gulf War game, and the Gulf War one's going to be interesting because that's aside from the Iraq War, I mean, one of the most, second most recent war that America was involved in. Still plenty of people that are video game playing age that served in that war, certainly. You'd be in your 50s to 60s, I guess, if it was the early 90s. It was 93 was 30 years ago, and you would have, potentially been straight out of high school. So yeah, your late 50s into your mid 60s, I guess. Still plenty of people playing video games at that age, So, I mean, maybe they could do something really interesting with the narrative. We've seen a lot of films that have investigated that time frame. I think, Jarhead takes place during the Gulf War. So, hopefully they can do some cool stuff with the single player campaign with that, because the single player campaign is essentially non-existent for this year's game. And I'd like to see Call of Duty return to having a big, bombastic, must play, summer action movie blockbuster type of single player campaign. I think that'd be really nice. I think they've, even though I enjoyed the Modern Warfare 2019 campaign, I played it through to completion. I think it was still pretty lacking. In this year's one, I'm not going to even bother. Last year's game, I got halfway through until I kind of got stuck, and then multiplayer had come out as I was playing it during the early access period. And I just wanted to play the multiplayer, so it just didn't matter to me. So I'd like to see them kind of redeem themselves with that, and we'll just, I guess, see how it goes. But, I think at some point they got to take a little bit of time off from Call of Duty and really kind of retool what they want this thing to be, because, even though I am enjoying this game quite a bit, there's a lot of press going around saying this is the weakest Call of Duty in years. And, even if that's not necessarily true, if you really get in and play the game, perception is reality. And that's going to cloud the judgment of a lot of people and kind of think back oh yeah, remember last year's game? Man, yeah, I remember all those articles about how it wasn't great. Yeah, I guess that game wasn't that great. And it's just, so I think they kind of need a win, for lack of a better term. Christian, you got any thoughts on Call of Duty?
The Gulf War brings back memories of when I made a war movie. Of course, mine wasn't about the Gulf War and barely made back half its budget, but, it still counts.
Yeah, dude, you were like the 4th lead in Wind Talkers, and that was about World War II. So, yes, yeah, sure, you were in a war movie. Good for you. All right, we got an update on a game that we covered a little while ago. South Park Snow Day, the next South Park game, not an RPG, going 3D. Judging by the gameplay, I thought initially this was like a tactics game. That's kind of what it looked like in that initial trailer and some of the articles that came out surrounding it. But if you watch the new trailer, you see that it is not. It is definitely a co-op experience, but it appears to just kind of be like a third-person hack and slash sort of damage numbers coming off the enemies when you attack them. I know a lot of people online were saying that they didn't really like the look of the 3D South Park stuff. I actually genuinely don't mind it. I actually thought the trailer looked pretty solid. And, you don't need every South Park game to look exactly like the show. Just because the show is 2D animation doesn't necessarily mean that the games have to be like, yes, the 2 RPGs, Stick of Truth and Fractured But Whole, like they looked fantastic. They looked like they were ripped straight out of the show. But I'm okay with them taking a different approach to this. It's a quote unquote budget title. It's going to be $30. It's coming out in March, coming out on current systems, plus the Switch and PC. I think that it looks fine. I'm playing the trailer over on my other monitor right now. It's probably not going to be super deep. It's probably not going to have a lot of depth. It's probably going to be most rewarding for people that are big fans of the show. It is going back to that kind of art style and theme of Stick of Truth, where it's a little bit more fantasy themed. It looks like you're probably going to have some special abilities. They show some special attacks, some statuses, like you're reviving teammates and stuff like that. I'd like to know a little bit more because it says grab up to 3 friends because it's 4-player co-op. I'd like to know, like, if you play it by yourself, are you going to have AI teammates, or you just be playing it by your lonesome? Like, is it going to scale? Like, that kind of thing. Is it drop in, drop out co-op? Do you have to organize things so everybody's starting at the same point? Like, how exactly is all this going to work? I assume that they'll probably get a little bit deeper into that as it gets closer to coming out. It's being made by a developer I'm not familiar with, Question Games. They made first-person games, The Magic Circle and The Blackout Club. I will be completely honest, I have not heard of either one of those games. That's not to say that they aren't a talented studio or something like that. They're just not games that have any type of familiarity with me. But I think it's a nice break from what they've been doing. South Park is not as culturally relevant as it once was, now that they are on a very infrequent episode production kind of schedule. They've kind of shifted, at least to me, as somebody that doesn't keep current with the show, it seems to me that they have shifted away from kind of doing traditional seasons to just doing these like special episodes and things like that. I was watching some South Park a few months ago, and I was like, you know what? I haven't watched any like recent South Park in a while. Let me grab some random episodes from the past few years. And those seasons looked very, very short. I think a couple of them are only just a handful of episodes long. So they've obviously changed quite a bit. It's a very long running show. It's been going since the 90s. But, when you compare it to something like The Simpsons, which you could say what you want about the quality of current systems, they're still pumping out a full season's worth every year of stuff. And obviously quantity isn't always better than quality, but you can see that South Park has just really kind of started to slow itself down. And just because of that, it's not being talked about as much because it's kind of something that you tend to forget about. So I think they're probably testing the waters with this game. If this does well at a cheaper price point, maybe then they can take the shot with another big developer like they did with Ubisoft and make another full price. I don't know if they do another RPG or whatever they want to do. But I think it's I think it's worth a shot checking it out. I'll certainly give it a look when it comes out. I don't think it looks as rough as a lot of people have been saying. But it's tough to tell off a minute-long trailer with just minimal gameplay. So, well, it's one to keep your eye on. All right, next up, we have some movement across studios. Gears of War, which has been dormant for a little while, their narrative director has now joined Sony Santa Monica. Bonnie G. Ma, she was working on Gears 5 and Gear Tactics. She is leaving. Was it the Coalition, right? The Coalition is the current one. So she is leaving. She was the narrative producer on Gears of War 4, narrative designer for Gears 5, and then she left to join Relic Entertainment, where she was the narrative lead and lead writer on Age of Empire 4. Then she came back to the Coalition and was overseeing narrative development on Gears game titles and extended universe publications. This is all coming from the article by Chris Scullion over at VGC. And now she's leaving to go to Sony Santa Monica to become a narrative designer there. If you're not familiar with Sony Santa Monica, they are the studio that makes the current God of War games. So what I'm kind of curious about is if she's actually going to be involved with games, because they talk about that it's very possible she will be the narrative director for the Amazon TV series that they are doing based on God of War. Sony Santa Monica said that they didn't plan on the Gears of War, the God of War games to be a trilogy. They were kind of okay with just doing the 2 games and going off to do something else. Personally, I am not a God of War fan. I did not like. I didn't play Ragnarok because I had no reason to, because I didn't finish the first reboot of the game. And I wouldn't even say it's a reboot. It's just a next entry in the series. I played that game a couple of times. Each time I played, I got less farther into it than the very first time I played. I remember I actually borrowed it from a coworker. I was taking a week off from work, and I was trying to find a game to play. He's like, you should play God of War, so he actually let me borrow it. I think I maybe got 4 or 5 hours into it. Couldn't finish it, just couldn't get through it. Went back a year later, tried playing it again, only got a couple hours in. And then I think it was last year was the last time I tried to play it again, and I got through the very opening moments of the game. It's that first fight against, I think, was it like Loki, or I think is what it is, where you're like getting shoved through like the house and the trees and all that stuff. It just wasn't for me. I just didn't like the way the game played. I have no connection to Kratos as a character because I didn't really play the PS2 ones or the PS3 ones. So it just wasn't for me. So personally, I would like to see them shift to something else. A new IP would be pretty cool. I think Sony is at the point now where they need to probably get some new IPs in there. They've had a couple that didn't really pan out super big, although it seems like they are committed to Ghost of Tsushima moving forward, even though, I think it was a really well-received game, but I don't think it was like a super hot seller for them, if that makes sense. Like, critical success, but not necessarily as big of a commercial success as The Last of Us, Uncharted, God of War, the other kind of big first-party stuff that they have. Spider-Man, absolutely. So I would like to see Sony put out some new IPs, because a lot of rumors have been going around, what is Naughty Dog working on? I would have to say that they are probably under so much pressure from Sony and so much pressure from HBO to do The Last of Us Part 3 that they probably are just working on The Last of Us Part 3. If I was in charge of that studio, that's what I would do. I would say, let's just do The Last of Us Part 3, wrap it up, no cliffhanger, everything's done, characters are settled, and then let's move on to whatever else we want to do. Just get it over and done with. Because, Last of Us Fever is just going to pick up again in 2025 when that next season comes out. So, they got the remake coming out in, less than 2 months, comes out in January. And then, they could maybe time it to have The Last of Us Part 3 come out end of 2024 or some point in 2025, maybe around the time that the show returns to the airwaves. We'll see. But, for Sony Santa Monica, it's a good pickup from them. You can say what you want about the quality of the narrative or the writing in Gears of War. I personally always thought it was a really well-told story. I would put up the Gears of War original trilogy against pretty much any other trilogy in games. And I think it was very strong. Even Uncharted, I am a very unabashed, huge Uncharted fan. Uncharted 2 is pinnacle of PlayStation 3 gameplay and all that. But I don't think Uncharted 1 was a super strong game, and I don't think it really holds up. And Uncharted 3, which was great, just couldn't hold a candle to 2. Now, if you want to include Uncharted 4 was phenomenal. But if you're talking about just the original trilogy, I think the strength of Gears 1, 2, and 3 is much stronger than the strength of Uncharted 1, 2, and 3, even though the peak of Uncharted 2 is probably higher than anything that Gears of War did. Overall as a trilogy, I think it was really good. Because you either see, with video game trilogies, you either have a really weak first entry, because they're still trying to figure things out and they kind of perfect things in the second entry, or you see a really strong start and then a weak finish in like the third installment. And I think Gears was one of the rare trilogies that kind of nailed it, the whole way through. All right, our final story this week, because this is going to end up being a short show because we just, it's holiday week, just not a lot happening, but Nintendo is getting saucy. Nintendo is adding an adults-only N64 app for the Switch in Japan. They are getting hot and steamy. So basically all it is they are just separating out the games in Japan that carry a Z rating. So that's their highest rate. Well, I don't know if it's their highest rating, but it's equivalent to like our mature. The Z rating, you have to be 18 years old to be able to buy it. So they are putting out GoldenEye 007, and it is, what is the other one there? Is it Jet Force Gemini? I think it's Jet Force Gemini. So those were both rated T here in the States, but they were rated Z in Japan. So you're going to have a separate app tied to the subscription service Nintendo Switch Online, only in Japan. They're not going to restrict anything here in the States because they didn't, they weren't a mature rating or anything like that. So it is just, it's just one of those like silly headlines, like Nintendo is having an adults only app. Like, of course, in Nintendo world, that is the most like G-rated thing that you possibly have, but it makes it sound so much worse than it actually is. But Nintendo is committed to being a family-friendly company, both here in the States and abroad. So it makes sense for them to do. It's a very Nintendo thing to do. Nintendo is just a very odd company that exists in Nintendo world, and the rest of the real planet doesn't really exist to them. But I would hope that if they are willing to do this, maybe they can go after trying to bring back some more M-rated N64 games. There weren't a ton, but there were certainly some out there. There's some first-person shooters that came out on the N64. I don't have a Switch anymore, so I don't keep current with what's on their online, selection of stuff. But I can't imagine that there's a lot of. I would actually be surprised if there's any M-rated games on there. I mean, obviously there weren't any for the Super Nintendo or the NES or anything like that. That was pre-ESRB for all of the NES's lifetime for the most part, and half the Super Nintendo's lifetime. I think there are definitely some Super Nintendo games that don't have a rating, I think. But the N64 definitely, Hexen probably was rated M, and I assume there's probably some Doom 64 was probably, let's see. Yeah, the South Park game, Resident Evil 2, Forsaken. So yeah, not necessarily the cream of the crop when it comes to games, but I don't know, maybe they pull some stuff and get it put on the system. But for their online thing, it's still a pretty decent bargain. It's not super expensive. You get the online play, and them adding some games. Of course, I think that they would be smarter to not add Jet Force Gemini and add, like, I don't know, Pokemon Yellow or something like that. But that's just me. Who am I to say what Nintendo should do? If they want to make more money or anything like that.
Oh, I know all about Nintendo's dirty little secrets. This whole video game thing is just a facade, a game of charades, if you will. Back in the 80s, they contacted me and the rest of the Tiger Beat scene to do some very sexy trading cards.
Cool. Did you live under power lines when you were growing up? My God. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this week. Yeah, definitely, shorter show. It's probably gonna be a shorter show next week as well. But in terms of what's coming out this week, There's really not much. I might try it because there's really nothing going on. We'll have the SteamWorld build thing later on in the week, but maybe I can cobble together another short. It's been some time. I think the last one I did was when Starfield came out. And that was the beginning of September. So maybe I can try and get a short put together or something like that, just to keep some type of content on the channel. I mean, I guess I could just stream more Call of Duty, but that just feels like, should I bother? I don't know. Maybe we could stream some Mario RPG or something. I don't know. But yeah, it's probably gonna be a little light, but the following week, next week, we'll have the new Perfect Reload video and all that to look forward to. But yeah, we're getting into not into the thick of things. We are getting into the thin of things. There's just not a lot going on in the world of video games right now, but we will still be here to provide you with the most cutting edge news coverage and opinion pieces as possible, because that's just the kind of media outlet that we are. We are. This is a shit show, but that's going to do it for me. Christian, anything you want to get out of your stupid mouth before we head out?
I know you have your big exam tomorrow, and I have some words of wisdom that I hope instill some confidence in you. I hope you blow it, and I hope they arrest you for being a sham.
Thanks. Much appreciated. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you again real soon.